What's up, fight fans? Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of Stoner versus Stoner. My name's Gina LaForge, and with me is my co-host Don Stoner. He's one half of Stoner versus Stoner. That is his real last name. Stoner is just an official job title for myself. Don Stoner, go ahead and introduce yourself to the people real quick.
Hey everybody, Don Stoner. We're back again. I'm a Higan Machado black belt, a martial arts school owner, been in martial arts and jiu-jitsu for over 20 years, and watch every MMA event, compete in submission underground and on some of the highest levels of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So yeah, super big martial arts fan. Always love talking shop with my brother Chino over here on Stoner versus Stoner.
And I'm just a professional stand-up comedian, professional stoner, and a fight enthusiast. I used to train as a young adult. I still train a little bit, but as age and injuries wear on, it just becomes enthusiasm. Now, enough about us. Let's talk about what we tuned in and the reason that we're talking. Let's talk UFC. First and foremost, we had an event. The reason we're called Stoner versus Stoner is because we compete by having our picks of the fights ahead of time and seeing whose picks are more reliable, which, Don, fortunately for yourself, you're proving to be quite the reliable guy, a winning record of 8-3. Great move, good picks. We had a great event last week, too. You went 3-1 in this one. Let's go ahead and talk about the main card. Let's start with the first fight that we had from the main card with Dariush and Holtzman. Pretty much went the way that you called it.
Yeah, pretty much the way I called it. Dariush came out hot. Dariush just went after Holtzman. I was expecting more of a submission-heavy game with Dariush, and he chose to just do the kickboxing. He chose to outstrike him. He saw some holes in Holtzman's game, and he capitalized on that. And yeah, he ended up finishing him round two like I thought. I thought he would, steadily break him down, either with a body kick or a punch, and then drop him and submit him. But he ended up just TKOing him. Actually, no, he did that spinning back fist on him, which is like circa 1980 kickboxing, some of my favorite stuff. I love spinning back fist.
Caught him with the club forearm. And the funniest part about that back fist, too, is that he said that his nephew – or no, I'm sorry, his friend's son Instagram messaged him, was like, hey, I'm playing UFC 4, and you have a really good spinning back fist. You should throw it. And he's like, but I don't really even throw that move. He's like, well, it's really good in the game. And he actually was like, well, I will try it. And he actually tried it and knocked him out with it.
That's so cool. That is so cool. I liked how he did it because he didn't, some guys when they do spinning back fists, they throw like 10 of them in a round, and then you're just expecting the spin. But the way he did it was it was set up beautifully. He was close enough to where he got him on the good part of his forearm and dropped him and knocked him out. And yeah, that was a great win for Dariush. What do you think about that fight?
Oh, it was a great fight. Dariush totally dominated him and worked the pace the entire fight. And just to break down that spinning back fist, there's a few different ways to set up a back fist to have it, throw it most effectively. First is to set up with the jab, which he didn't do. He didn't use the classic method where you set up with the jab and use that momentum from the jab to take your hips over. What he did is he used a step out. It's a peel out method. So he used his front foot to step outside of the jab foot so that he was able to cut the angle. So instead of having to spin a full 360 degrees, he only had to spin about 270, which means that the torque that you catch him with is the amount that you would catch him is more than you would catch him with at the end of your spin because you're still spinning. It's kind of like how you want to punch through the fist. He really caught him at the perfect point of his torque, and he caught him with the forearm and kept the elbow bent. If you straighten the arm too much, you can hyperextend your elbow if you hit too deep. He did a good job of tucking it, keeping his spin tight, and that just added to his centrifugal force too. So it was a textbook spinning back elbow. It didn't land or spinning back punch. It didn't land exactly where you would traditionally want to, but that's the glory of that punch, is that if you level it right, you have that whole forearm to account for any type of calculation errors. And the whole fight, he just outpaced them, outstepped them, outworked them, didn't really give him any daylight anywhere. I didn't see anywhere where Holtzman had any opportunity to win a fight. Yeah, that was complete domination.
But was it fight of the night?
No. I don't think either one of us were on par with fight of the night, unfortunately.
I feel like both of those fights could have been fight of the night. I was a little disappointed.
Yeah, I agree. They didn't end the way that we had expected. But, they both ended with finishes. So, I mean, no complaints here. The next fight was, I felt like I'd seen it before. It kind of felt like the Usman-Masvidal fight. We had Yana and Joliha. I don't know how to say it. But that was a pretty start to finish cage fight. She pinned her against the wall and just Usman'd her for a good 3 rounds. Didn't give her any daylight. Got her tired. Didn't get to see any of JoJo's combinations that she has. She's got great footwork, but wasn't able to display anything because she just got completely avalanched.
Completely nullified. I didn't actually know too much about the fighters. I just kind of picked her on a whim. But Yana is actually either her significant other is Thiago Santos, the Brazilian fighter, the top-ranked light heavyweight. So they train together. So I figured she would be in shape. But her style is really, really cool to see in that division. It's like a Randy Couture, like you're saying, a Kamaru Usman type game where they do the cage fight. She never let her opponent get off the cage. It didn't seem like the whole fight. She was just on her the whole time. She was really big, has a real strong back, good underhooks, really high up with her underhooks, played a great game. And she's going to be hard for anybody in that division. If they don't have good wrestling, I see Yana finishing or at least winning a lot of fights in that fashion. So she really impressed me in that fight. And I know how good the other girl is too. I think she was a Invicta champion. She was, like you said, has really good hands. She could never get off with that smothering style. It was really, really cool fight.
Yeah, it was interesting to see that strategy utilized in a women's division finally. At least not like with the cyborg method of ground and pound, but more with just the clinch heavy, wet blanket style of fighting against the cage. I mean, it may not be the most exciting for some of the new fans, but for people who've been fans of MMA for a long time, to see the evolution of dirty boxing has really been a pivotal point of the sport, because MMA is the only sport that really allows the clinch fighting to continue at the length that it does. In kickboxing, in boxing, even in bare knuckle boxing, in any of the sports that you're going to tune into these days, anytime they get into the clinch, the referee separates them as if that's not a part of the fight. We forget that judo is 90% in the clinch, or not 90. I mean, they got great ground game as well. But when you account for the diversity of jiu-jitsu versus judo, you're utilizing your judo more in that clinch range. So I think it really just makes for a need for a more diverse fighter. And it's really cool to see a new set of skills come out in the women's division to really mix things up and kind of throw a wrench in anybody's game plan of complete and utter domination. What weight class was she fighting at again? Was it at 25? Let's see.
Maybe 35. She looks pretty big.
Yeah, she did look big, but I think that might have also just been because of her game plan. So I think it's 35. So in her division, she does have some stacked talent. I'm interested to watch her climb. It is a bit of a soft middle in that top 10 that she can really sink her teeth into, though.
Yeah, I could see her cracking the top 10 for sure. She actually trains at Extreme Couture. So she has all of Randy Couture's staff, including Randy Couture's son, Ryan Couture, showing her, the game, and she's just taken to it. And, she's going to have trouble with, Nunes. She's going to have trouble with, Amanda, the Australian, Megan Anderson. She's going to have trouble with her because she's also a big fighter too. And she knows how to keep a distance with her punches. So we'll see how she evolves through it.
That's the next fight I want to see. I want to see her and Megan get it on. That would be, I can't say potential fight of the year in the women's category because we've already seen fireworks from the women's category in the first 3 months of the year. So, it's going to be hard to top Joanna and and Weili. That was amazing. So, we got much to look forward to, much to look back on. But the fight after that, I was expecting more fireworks, but it was a great finish. Maki Pitolo and Darren Stewart. Maki came out hot. He came out how I expected him to. He was swinging big punches. He was really getting in the face of his opponent, and his opponent used his aggression against him and caught him with some slick jiu-jitsu. What's your breakdown on that, Don?
That's pretty much how the fight went. I didn't know too much about Maki except that he's your Hawaiian brethren. So I knew that you had to pick him because you can't go back to Maui, going against Maki. But no, he's good. Maki, that's a tough style for somebody who's not versed in that type of defense. Darren Stewart. I was actually surprised that Maki clinched in that moment. They had a wrestling exchange. I think Maki could have backed away from that a little better and disengaged. But I think, like you said, he just saw red and he wanted to go after it. Darren Stewart set up a beautiful guillotine, no arm guillotine, and it's with the RNC grip. So it's even tighter than your standard guillotines that you're going to see, like a 10-finger guillotine or a one-arm guillotine. That's a very powerful guillotine, and it's really hard to escape. Out of all the guillotine series, that's one of the hardest ones to escape. So when he locked that in, it was over. But yeah, so Maki has another fight. They booked him immediately on this next, not this show, but the next show. So we're going to see him again, and I want to see him again. I want to see him develop a little more.
And both fighters made it out of the fight relatively uninjured.
That's a win. That's a win for Maki. Maki, he needs more experience. We need some more Hawaiian fighters too, right? So I think he has promise. He has power. You can tell he throws big shots. He's an exciting fighter, but they need to put him against somebody that they can have an exciting fight with. And Darren Stewart's like a guy where he sees that opportunity and gets it. But it was a great guillotine. Last time I saw that was with Cowboy Cerrone when he got that guillotine. And that's a rare guillotine to get in a fight. So, the great fight, though. Yeah,
it was quick, unfortunately, but still a great fight. After that, we had Akhmedov versus Chris Weidman, which happened somewhat the way we thought it would. Chris looked like he was in some pretty deep water in that second round. He looked tired. He looked out of his space. He looked a little hurt. Man, did he rally back for that third round. I think the big question after seeing that fight is there potential for upward trajectory for Weidman from this point? Or is it time to start thinking about other options from the UFC? Because, there's a lot of talk going both ways. How do you feel about that?
In our last podcast, we talked about, we were saying, please, Chris Weidman, take him down, submit him, use your ground game. Don't try to outstrike this guy. And that's what he did. He used the first 2.5 minutes to strike and kind of feel Amari out. He let Amari kind of gas himself out. He blocked a lot of shots from Amari, which is always dangerous because that's the time, when there's a danger of being knocked out. But he kind of cooked Amari a little bit. And then when 2 minutes were on the clock, he took him down and he smothered him in round one. Dominated round one, or, he decisively, let's just say he won round one. It could have, it was kind of back and forth because Amari had some good stand-up exchanges. Round two was questionable. Omari came out super hot in round two. Really kept his distance, really tried to defend the takedown, and it looked like Weidman was tired. In round three, he secured that takedown, took him down, passed his guard, mounted him. And I want to look at the stats at that, but I don't remember the last time someone stayed in mount for that long and just held the guy in mount. The guys right now, the fighters are so good at escaping mount or even preventing mount from happening with the different explosions. You come out, take a double leg, whatever. But Chris Weidman completely, he was using hip pressure. He was attacking that arm triangle, but he was failing. But then he used the arm triangle as a pin. So he pinned him in the arm triangle for a good 1 minute and then just milked the round. And I don't know about you, but I was yelling during that fight. I was like, Chris, don't let him up. Don't let him up in that round 3.
It was a noisy second round in my household for sure. We couldn't contain ourselves. I had my roommates watching as well. And all of us were on our feet screaming because we all had our different choices. One of my roommates had Omari to win the fight too. So that was his big round where he saw that potential daylight at the end of the tunnel. But Chris Weidman did a great job of powering through the fight and just making sure that he stuck to the game plan. And anytime he looked uncomfortable, he changed levels. He got the fight to a different place so that his opponent never got a chance to feel overly comfortable in the ring. And he did a great job of just taking the ring away from him. So props to Chris Weidman.
That was the old Chris Weidman. As far as what he can do in the future, if he sticks to that game plan, I think he's going to be able to keep moving forward in the rankings for sure. Chris Weidman's problem is when he gets against these top wrestlers, right? And he can't play that game. And those guys, are so explosive. He can't control them, or he starts to go with the boxing and thinks he's a boxer again, and then he loses a fight that way. But if he keeps with that game plan, I can see Chris moving forward.
I can see him moving forward, but I don't know if I can see him anywhere in the top 5. And Chris Weidman's a champion. He's a champion fighter. He's a fighter that fights for the championship, and he's in a tough weight class. I don't see him making the top 5, and I might see that being a big motivating factor for him. I do know for champions, they want to fight for championships, and if they're not necessarily on the path, but maybe he's got a great camp in him. Maybe he's still got a little bit more of that spark left in him, and maybe he's got a bunch of yes men around him. Hopefully it's not the Luke Rockhold syndrome where he's got too many people telling him to go jump off the bridge. But let's hope that he does have people pumping him full of that confidence, because I do know there's a lot of naysayers out there who've seen the fight. Even though he won the fight, there's a lot of people kind of talking that dookie about how he needs to work on some things at middleweight. Some of it might have also been the weight cut. He might not be used to cutting down to middleweight again. That's kind of a deep cut. So there's a lot of factors, and also a lot of people are factoring in what a dog Omari is. He may not be a fighter with the extreme knockout power or the most talented grappling, but he is a tough son of a bitch. That dude will stand in front of you and walk forward and eat your shots and deflect your takedowns and just get you against the cage. And he did a good job trying to implement his game plan, but he was against one of the best to ever do the sport. The guy who took down Anderson Silva in his prime. This is a legend of the sport in his later years, but still very dangerous. Like an old lion in a pride. Once the alpha takes them out, they're out. But they've taken out a lot of good young alphas that could have taken over if there was a lesser creature there. So the last fight of the night, my only win, the only fight I picked correctly, the Derek Lewis and Oleinik fight. That was vintage Derek Lewis. I mean, if we look at his highlights and we clip them all together, you could throw that clip in the middle and not tell the difference between that and several other ones. Alexei did a great job of trying to keep him in front of him and really not allowing him to pressure heavy. And he allowed the fight to get to the ground, which was super surprising. But, I mean, let's just go ahead and talk about it. Did you know that Derek Lewis could throw a flying knee like that?
Man, the flying knee was insane. Alexei, what happened to Alexei in that fight is Alexei, he had the first round, he had some success, he got him down. And then when he got him in that scarf hold, kind of a headlock position, a head and arm position, you see it in wrestling, you get the head and arm. And Alexei can transition that to a choke. And when he found out that Derek Lewis's head was just too large and his bald head was just too slippery, he got demotivated. He just got crushed. And you can even see his face. And I think he made some comments or something. He's just like, man, that's crazy. I could
Yeah,
not
jumped
finish.
this guy. Yeah, yeah. He was
Yeah.
talking to his corner where he was like, I can't do it. And it was the same thing I had said earlier when we were talking about the Ezekiel choke. I'm like, I think he found the one person who's next too big to Ezekiel. And I think when they clinched up, he realized that and went straight for the hip takedown to try to get him on the ground and maybe re-angle. Yeah, Derek Lewis is somebody who's going to make you rethink all your game plans the second you're confronted with it, because he's built like nobody else. If you're a heavyweight, you've never fought anybody like Derek Lewis. If you haven't fought Derek Lewis, there's no comparison. The way he's built his structure, like even when you compare him and Ngannou in build, you're going to see a difference as far as upper body structure. Ngannou's a little bit more balanced in his weight. He's a little bit more of a physique heavy guy too. But when you look at Derek Lewis, you see density. You don't just see mass. You see mass and momentum. You see a different type. And with that ground and pound, all that shock is being absorbed directly to the person and bouncing off the ground and coming back up to them. As far as, the Ngannou uppercut, at least the force has some space to dissipate. When you're getting ground and pounded by Derek Lewis, it's all in your head. And with an empty ring, you could hear how devastating his ground and pound is. It just sounded like somebody was slapping a hammer against a slab of ribs.
Yeah, just so loud. Yeah, it was just painful to watch. Yeah, Derek Lewis, the cool thing, I like Derek Lewis now is he's so self-aware. He's like talking about how if he can just cut the next level of body fat, he can have better conditioning. And that'll be really interesting to see if it's true. If he does cut the body fat and he is better, then, a lot of those fights that he had before are going to be different, right? A lot of those fights that he had before where he gassed out and then he had to he came back, but he still lost the fight, a lot of the fights because he gassed out. How is he going to look a trimmed up Derek Lewis? He's not a Roy Nelson that's just saying, I want to stay at this, overweight, place. He wants to get trimmed. He wants to be the champion. And
yeah, he's serious.
I think he can. Yeah, I really think he can.
He's dead serious about it. And I seen a different Derek Lewis now than I did before he fought Daniel Cormier the first time. Because even then he wasn't confident enough to fight the champion. They were just looking for meat to throw into the grinder, really. And he's been working on his grappling. I know that Alexei had a point where he dominated the grappling, but not dominated. Derek Lewis did a good job of avoiding the immediate difficulties in the ground game, and he did weather a storm when it came to a pretty strong submission attempt that a lesser fighter probably would have tapped to. It looked like an uncomfortable lock. Whether or not it was choking him, is definitely putting enough pressure on his chin for him to get sent to panic mode. And good on Derek Lewis for just biting down on that mouthpiece and making sure that he weathered the storm. It was a great way to come back from that first round. It was an awesome fight. I think that was fight of the night, and I think it also showed just the sheer striking power involved when it comes to heavyweights. The difference. Like some people will watch other fights and be like, oh, the heavyweights are fine, but they get tired in the second or third round, and maybe they're not the most exciting. But then you see a first or second round knockout like that, and you're like, that's why they're the baddest dudes on the planet. Because they're the only ones strong enough to deliver that type of punch. They're the only ones strong enough to even take that type of punch. With the sizes of neck muscles large enough to take that punch. Anywho, that was a great UFC event. We got an even better one coming up. UFC 252. The trilogy is finally happening. We got Stipe, we got DC, a big fight happening. We had talked about this earlier. Now, I'm going to go ahead and be honest. I agree with you. Okay? You picked DC, and I agree. I think DC is going to win this fight. But the odds in this fight are so split. The chances are so slim. Everything is so on the table and so even that I'm willing to just say, fine, Stipe will win. Just because I think this fight is literally a coin flip. Don, how do you feel about
Yeah, it's a coin flip, but when it comes down, when I think of this fight, I think about the way that DC beat Stipe. A lot of people will say, "Oh well, he landed that good left hook, or he outboxed him, he figured out his game." But when you really look at that fight, DC beat Stipe because he poked him in the eye, like John Jones. There was multiple eye pokes in that round, and Stipe is such a champ that he didn't make a big deal about it. But all of DC's fights with John Jones, he got poked in the eye, right? And that's, let's be honest. John Jones poked most people in the eye with his defense, his handout defense that he always does with his two arms out. DC implemented that defense and beat Stipe. And that comes down to somebody who knows how to win. That's what DC's a guy who knows how to win fights. Stipe is a guy who's very technical, and who is just dedicated to making his skills better, dedicated to making his boxing better. I don't care if he's working in the firehouse. I don't care if he's on the farm. I don't believe any of that. Stipe is going to be ready. But for me, this being DC's last fight, I think DC is going to dig deep, and DC is going to pull out some of the tricks. Maybe the eye pokes again. If he gets on the eye poke into a double leg, or gets on the eye poke to the boxing, the close shots, I could see that fight going down that way again, where DC takes a fight again against Stipe.
But the eye poke happened in the second fight too, and Miocic still took that one. And I think this fight is going to be a fight of adjustments. I think it's going to be a huge fight of both fighters showing different looks than they've showed each other before. I don't know. I'm pretty sure Miocic is still working with his same camp, which is a great team to still be working with. But I don't know if they're going to be able to throw out enough different looks. DC is going to cover that hole in his belly. I guarantee it. I guarantee you, Miocic won't find any scrap of belly to find a body shot on, because DC, dude, they're too good. His camp is too good. The people he trains with, they're too good. They're gonna find ways to not only defend against that, but to counter that. And I really hope Miocic's team is really prepared for that division level of chess match, because that's what it's gonna be, especially when you fight a king like DC. Like I said, I agree with you with the DC. If I'm betting, if I'm putting money on this, if you're listening to either one of us for money reasons, take DC. That is the good money bet, because the odds are still split. And he's probably going to win. He's got more tools to beat Miocic. I think his best chance of winning is either knocking him out or taking the fight rounds where he doesn't get taken down. But DC's going to wear him down. He's going to take him down. And it's really just going to be a matter of, can Miocic land that knockout shot? And I think it's literally 50-50. So that's why I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll take Stipe. Why not? Why not? And so I don't feel so bad if I'm wrong, because I can still say I'm right.
That's the best hedge, man. I almost feel like we need to switch our picks now. Now I'm like thinking I want to be with Stipe. But it could go either way, man. I mean, DC, like you said, he has more tools. He can take you down. He can his boxing's developed and everything like that. So I totally agree with you. DC is going to come out with a different trick. DC is going to come out with a new trick, whether it's a kick to leg, a body kick. DC can open up more. Yeah, I think DC has the ability to open up.
Yeah, I think he's coming out with a knee stomp. That's my prediction. That's what I was thinking about. It seems to be the hot move right now. Not a lot of heavyweights are throwing it because they know just how devastating it is to heavyweight careers. I see him coming out and throwing a knee stomp really quick towards the opening. And I think if it lands the way he's hoping, then that'll really dictate the pace of the fight. Because I feel like the knee stomp is the new switch foot cross. It's one of those moves that people are like, oh yeah. Especially after seeing Robert Whittaker throw it perfectly on Darren Till and completely compromising the fight. More fighters are like, ooh, and you threw it with the back foot? Nice. Like it's one of those moves that are kind of being adapted, and I wouldn't be surprised if it came from a new angle that we haven't seen from. So, yeah. But after that fight, we got one of my boys, my gravy train, my hype man, Sugar Sean O'Malley. He's fighting again, and in I guess this would be a co-main event. It's the fight before the main event. Would that be considered a co-main event? A
Yeah.
pre-main event, a teaser, an aperitif?
I'll go with the co.
Whatever.
Appetizer, baby.
Yeah, it's a great fight to lead into a championship fight. Chito Vera and Sugar Sean O'Malley. Finally, some meat on the table for Sean. This is a good fight for him. And this is a good fight for Chito, too. Because he's a great fighter. A lot of people are overlooking Chito Vera. He's got some credentials. He's certified. This dude's bad. What do you think is going to happen in this fight, Don?
Well, I picked Vera, right?
Yeah.
I picked Chito. Yeah. You know, I'm just not, I am not a believer in Sugar Sean yet. Who's he fought? I mean, he's fought Terrion Ware, a pretty good boxer from Southern California that took him the distance. He fought a bunch of other guys who he dominated in devastating fashion. But, even like when we were talking about Shabazian, at least Shabazian took out a top guy with Brad Tavares. But Sugar Sean, to me, is a good boxer. Yes. Decent jiu-jitsu. Okay. No wrestling. Boom. Does he have heart? I haven't seen it yet because nobody's put him in that situation. Chito, on the other hand, we know he has heart. Chito's a guy who's going to fight every weekend because he got his family from, wherever, Cuba or whatever. And, and he wants to make a statement. And Chito's a lot more, way more active. So I feel like now Chito has a lot more experience than Sugar Sean. Does Chito have the boxing or any of these major skills? No. But Chito, in my mind, is now almost hitting that veteran status with how many fights he's had and the consistency that he's fought. So Sugar Sean, I think Sugar Sean's going to be very confident and possibly overconfident. That's why I picked Chito Vera to win this fight, because I think Chito Vera wants it more than Sugar Sean wants it. And yeah, that's how I'm going to go in that fight. I think Vera's going to I think it's going to be a decision, and I think Vera's going to decision Sugar Sean O'Malley.
Chito Vera's a bad dude. I'll give you that. He's a bad dude. Like I'm saying, this is the first real talent that Sugar Sean O'Malley's fought. And I understand what you're saying. Who has he beat? But I'm not talking about who he's beat. I'm talking about how he beat them. Holy shit, how he beat them. This is the next stage of mixed martial arts. Chito Vera still is he's an evolved fighter, but you can tell he's trained by fighters who are still in a place of specialists, where they have a jiu-jitsu coach and a striking coach, and you can tell that Sugar Sean comes from this new style of coaching where it's all MMA. Everything's MMA. They don't speak Latin, they speak Spanish. There's no roots anymore. It's all just the new language of MMA, and it's different. It's really different. We're seeing a huge shift in these fighting styles, where now people are able to train MMA. I remember when it first started, you'd have to go different places, and then now you can maybe get your supplements from one gym and then switch to another to fill out the holes that they have, and then maybe go to a third one eventually if you still have some gaps in your game. But now we're looking at an era where it's like, no, we do everything. We run, we jump, we climb trees, we do all of it. Like it's and I think Sean O'Malley is going to be a great example of the hybrid of the new MMA series of fighters. I'm all bored. I'm drinking the punch. I'm swimming in the Kool-Aid. I'm all on the gravy train with Sugar Sean O'Malley. You heard it here. I think he's making the run. But, of course, we have the naysayers.
Against it. I'm just against, the Sugar Sean, man. When Sugar Sean takes that body shot and then he keeps coming, you know what I mean? When somebody kicks his leg 100 times and then he still wins the fight, I want to see Sugar Sean go through some adversity in his fights to be able to know, is this dude real? Because you can go on Facebook, you can paint your hair like a clown, and you can paint your Maltese's hair like a clown. That's perfect. And you can paint your Chihuahua's hair like a clown. But can you get past adversity? That's my question for Sugar Sean.
I was
That's
also
what
wondering if he dipped his dog, like how you like tie dye, put a corner in and
a
roll around.
snow cone or something.
Yeah, I'm a hype guy. I'm a hype guy, and if you got good hype, you bring good thunder. I want to see the lightning, so I'm all on board.
Well, that's how Conor McGregor. That's McGregor came up like that, right? And so many
Absolutely.
other great guys came up like Israel came up like that, and Sugar Sean has all the makings of that because, like you said, he's so technical and his movement and the way he goes in and out and sets up shots and mixes the game up. But you
Well,
have to go against a good fighter and take a good shot. Is my point.
it's also his facial recognition, his ability to realize just exactly how far his opponent is. Cheeto Vera's got great body shots. You're right. I do know about his front hook that he throws from the outside step to the body. But can he get close enough with those little T-Rex arms? Sugar Sean O'Malley has got about a 6 reach. I think the last time I checked, a 5 or a 6 inch reach advantage on him, which is no small potatoes. Can he get inside of that? Because Sean O'Malley's also got legs, and he's not afraid to use them. So, but it's a battle of attrition. If Cheeto can take it into the second, third rounds, he's only got higher and higher chances of having gotten inside. So I think the longer this fight goes, the more it will lean towards Vera. But if Sean keeps up in true fashion, this fight could be over quickly. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. If you get shot in that nerve on your chin, night-night, payday. And we'll be seeing a dollar sign dyed in the back of his head next week. But like I said, Vera's never anybody to discount. The dude is bad. He's a bad dude. And he fights like an asshole, too. So that's the perfect person to fight Sean O'Malley for his first howdy do welcome to the UFC. Mm-hmm. Before that fight, though, we're going to have Junior Dos Santos versus Rosenstruck. That, I think, has high potential for a knockout. I think we're looking somewhere around the 90 percentile of a knockout in that fight. What do you think?
Yeah, that's going to definitely – I think that's definitely going to end up in a knockout. And who knows who's going to get it, JDS, I'm rooting for JDS like I was rooting for Chris Weidman, man. I want JDS to win. Ever since he knocked out Cain Velasquez that one time, I've just always cheered for JDS. Seems like the coolest guy, always respectful. His boxing is so loose and fluid, the way he snaps shots together. But in the heavyweight division, it's a little different, right? It's like Rosenstrike. Rosenstrike has this amazing kickboxing accolade. And who did I pick in that fight?
You got Dos Santos.
Yeah, so I want Dos Santos to win for sure. It's going to be a tough road for Dos Santos if he wins that, because Rosenstrike is one of these guys where he can knock you out in the first minute, he can knock you out in the 14th minute of the fight. And JDS is more of a 1 to 2 round guy. When JDS, you can tell when JDS loses his steam and starts to break down. But Rosenstrike, you can't really tell. But yeah, I think it's going to end up in a knockout. I mean, probably round 1. It's going to be, knockout round 1, round 2. I don't see how these guys can get a decision.
I don't see it going past 2:30 in the second round. That's pretty much in the math. You look at the way these guys fight. You look at the way most of their fights have been finished. It's not going to be a long night for either one of them most of the time. And if you look at the way they throw punches, Junior Dos Santos' angles, very uppercut and up the middle. You look at Rosenstruck's angles, you got some very awkward off-angle shots that he mixes in with his straight down the middle jabs. A lot of front kick showings. They really do have styles that complement each other for offensive defense. Nobody really has a clear angle of set in where it's like, oh, I have this advantage. The reason I'm picking Rosenstruck is just because of trajectory. Given the past few fights, Rosenstruck's trajectory is going up. Junior Dos Santos coming off a loss, maybe not so much. When we saw him come back, it didn't look like immediately the same JDS that we've seen before. But, maybe that was just some ring rust. Maybe that was because of his opponent. He did have a great opponent in front of him. I'm just going with momentum on this one, purely momentum, because there's one thing I do know: this fight's gonna probably most likely end out in a knockout. And don't look away at any point once Bruce Buffer gets the names done, because that is when the magic starts, and it's starting, and it's gonna happen. And then before that fight, let's see, what do we have? We have Herbert Burns and Daniel Padina. I think that's a new addition. I didn't see that earlier. I don't know anything about either fighter. Do you?
Daniel Pineda.
Panetta, excuse me. I said it wrong. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So
Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
So
yes. Okay. No, yes. I do know these fighters. What am I saying? Sorry about that. There was no photo for the link that I looked up, so I'm like, who are these guys? What?
yeah. So Herbert Burns, that's Gilbert Burns' brother, right?
Yes.
So Gilbert Burns, everybody knows Gilbert Burns. Herbert Burns, his brother, younger brother, went to ONE FC, had a couple good fights in ONE. UFC picked him up in the Contender Series. He ended up getting signed, and Herbert Burns' last fight was like round 1, tied the guy up and choked him out or whatever, and just super, super fast. Daniel Pineda is a veteran out of Texas. He's also a good jiu-jitsu guy, which is terrible for Pineda because he's going to have some confidence to think he can defend something that Herbert Burns does, and he's just not going to be able to, because there's different levels of jiu-jitsu, and Herbert Burns is on a whole other plane of jiu-jitsu than Pineda. So I think that's going to go submission, round 1, Herbert Burns, RNC. He's going to do probably a double leg, take the back from there, and tie him up in an RNC.
You know, in looking at the stats and checking the numbers, you're not lying, Don. You did your homework. You know what's going on with these fellas. I don't think Daniel Pineda is a great fighter, but he's an older guy. He's been fighting for a while. He's had his run in the UFC previously, 4 years ago, if I remember correctly. He fought in Bellator. Then he most recently fought in Fury. So it's not exactly like he's been having a great go of things. His past 2 fights have been no contests. Who knows why? Most of the fights that have been ruled no contest recently or overturned calls, drugs. But it's not exactly a championship bout, so no judgment being thrown around. However, I really don't think that he has what it takes to take on Herbert Burns. If Herbert Burns fights anything like his brother, even at a certain percentage, I don't see any way that the pit's gotten anything for him. So I think we both agree on that one. But before that, we have John Dodson. Versus, help me out with his last name. I hate doing last names. Deligivi?
Oh yeah. Marab Devalicious something. Yeah, that guy. Probably one of the hardest names. I mean, man, on the roster.
I love seeing these Eastern European fighters and the Middle Eastern fighters come in, but we need to find some phonetic system to put underneath names, just so we don't feel like tourists when we're missaying everybody's names. We want to say your names right. I don't know how Bruce Buffer does it. I hope he has phonetics. Anyways, I think we both picked John Dodson on this fight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Dodson, I just know more about him. There's a lot more intel to look at, and he's a great fighter. He's a fighter that I admire, and I think that he's got a whole lot of talent and a whole lot of belonging in the top of his weight class as his talents mature. How do you feel about Dodson on that?
Yeah, it looks like it's going Dodson's way. Dodson's always had trouble because the divisions that he was in were dominated by Mighty Mouse, dominated by Cejudo, dominated by Benavidez. So these are the guys that are always winning the fights. And then when Dodson would get him, he'd lose. And then Dodson would have to work his way back up and work his way back up. But Dodson's really an OG of jiu-jitsu and MMA. He's like a Diego Sanchez. He comes from that time. So Dodson's definitely the veteran. Merab, though, is pretty good too. He trains with Frankie Edgar and Edson Barboza. So we know he has a good camp. They have the boxing guy over there. Can't think of the guy's name. Very good. Frankie Edgar's boxing coach. He trains with him. And so
not
he's
Duke,
going
right?
to be What's that?
It's not Duke, right?
I don't think it's Duke. God, who is that guy? Frankie Edgar's boxing coach.
I'm gonna look that up real quick. Please continue.
Yeah. Yeah. He's good. He's won some fights. Merab's won some fights. He's a decision fighter. He fights at the end. He's pretty well rounded, but he's not as well rounded as Dodson, and he doesn't have as much power as Dodson in his hands. He doesn't have as good wrestling as Dodson, and his jiu-jitsu is not as good as Dodson.
Mark Henry is his boxing coach.
Yeah, Mark Henry. Mark Henry's really, really, really good. Mark Henry's a really amazing boxing coach.
Mm-hmm.
So he works with those guys, and if he's training with Edgar and he's training with that camp, he's going to be ready. But that's pretty much going to be Dodson's fight. The problem with Dodson is we haven't seen Dodson in a while, right? We haven't seen Dodson. Dodson has not been active. Normally when Dodson is making a title run or climbing up the rankings, he's having back-to-back fights. It's been so long now. So that fight could actually go either way. That fight's one of the ones where I was like, I don't know who to pick on this one. Merab might be, if you're betting on an underdog, Merab might be the guy to go on that fight. I think he has actually a pretty good chance to win that fight, so just because Dodson's been inactive.
Yeah, it's got the upset potential if the odds are deep enough, and you're playing an odd spread for your betting wages. Take it. You might be able to win something off nothing. Who knows? So moving on to MMA news, let's talk about some of the contracts that have been going on. Bellator has been buying up fighters under the UFC's nose. I don't know if a lot of people know about this. Corey Anderson most recently was purchased. And then who else's contract did I say that they had up recently? We have Miles Jury. And Valerie Loreda. I don't know if you saw this in Bellator recently, but Valerie Loreda had one of the most impressive women's knockouts of this year, and then followed it with probably one of the sexiest dances I've ever seen a fighter do in a post-fight. And we've seen the Anderson Silva shake. We've seen all types of dances, but this
we've seen the Ben Rothwell bounce around.
Oh yeah, I can't forget the Ben Rothwell dance. We've seen the Roy Nelson shake. But we really can't. This one was confusing for me because it was the first time seeing a fighter dance after a fight where I was turned on. I'm not gonna lie. She's a very fit fighter, and I was like, oh, whoa, don't mix these emotions for me. It was it was difficult for me because I just seen a knockout, and I'm not used to having that emotional swing so heavy. But who knows? That's heavy in marketability. I mean, some people like Coke, some people like Pepsi, and some people like Mountain Dew.
Some people like Fanta too,
yeah.
right?
What do you think about her post-fight display there, Don?
It was good. It's Bellator was really weird. I watched that whole card because one of my buddies was fighting against AJ Agazarm, and he got a big win. Chris Lencioni, he beat one of the greats of jiu-jitsu in AJ Agazarm and completely dominated that fight. And Chris is a Bellator star, but that whole card was weird because they gave them so much time in the interview. So like even in Chris's fight, AJ was mad that he lost, and then you could hear all the banter between those two. And then Chris had like 10 minutes on the mic, and it even seemed like he had extra mic time. So then when Valerie won her fight, she did the dance, right? And that was pretty awesome. And yeah, so Bellator's coming up for sure, but Bellator's only taking fighters that the UFC doesn't want. And that's how it's always been, right? So, if you look at, who does Bellator have? They're either going to have the old legends from the UFC, Chael, Wanderlei, Rampage,
Eddie
Alvarez. They're going to take those guys. And now Corey Anderson fits that bill. Corey Anderson's different than the other guys. The other guys are draws, but the other guys are past their prime. Corey Anderson is just not a draw. He's really, really good. But the UFC's in a situation where, like, if Corey Anderson becomes champion, like, No one cares about the champion. Corey Anderson doesn't talk. He's like Joe Lewis against Muhammad Ali. You know, Muhammad Ali had to hold the whole fight and talk all the smack against Joe Lewis. It made him look stupid. And that's how I feel like about Corey Anderson. When Corey Anderson gets a big fight, you know, he just doesn't know how to talk. He doesn't promote himself. You know, he wins fights. He wins. You know, you could call it a boring style. You could just call it a strategic winning style. But, you know, it gets to that point in the contract negotiation where they go, okay, Corey Anderson now wants, you know, DC money, but he doesn't bring in DC fans, or John Jones money doesn't bring in John Jones fans. So then it opens it up for okay, Bellator takes him. Bellator is stoked to take him because they're like, hey, we just got one of the UFC's top dogs. But it's the same thing that would happen with Bader. You know, Bader, UFC, you know, Bellator took Bader, and then all of a sudden Bader just dominates all of Bellator. I think he's even their champion in a couple of weight classes. So yeah, it just I don't see it as, you know, when Bellator takes UFC's draw, right? When Bellator takes a McGregor or a Khabib or somebody at the top of their game, then I'm going, okay, Bellator now is it. But when Bellator takes Corey Anderson, I'm just like, this is what Bellator does.
It may be a lateral move, but a lateral move for Bellator is a move upward. And I do agree, they're not the UFC. But for Bellator to be making moves in upward, forward-moving progression, that shows that there's staying power there, because the UFC hasn't allowed a lot of competition. And I'm pretty sure in some facet they're in bed with Bellator, aren't they?
Yeah, but the problem with Bellator is that they don't give their fighters the amount of fights that they need to make a living. Right. UFC's contracted 3 fights a year to give their fighters. Right. So even guys in Bellator like Bader, for instance, the last time Bader fought probably been a year or something. You know, we haven't seen Rampage, we haven't seen Wanderlei. You know, those guys will make a good penny on their fight, but they can't make the money that they can in UFC. That's why I think for Corey Anderson, it's a really bad move, because he could go to Bellator and they're going to give him an instant title shot. That's really the controversy, is giving Corey Anderson an instant title shot. Mm-hmm. But you're going to get the title shot, Corey Anderson, but you're only going to be able to fight once or twice a year. You know, the only guys that fight multiple times a year are like Michael Chandler. You know, if you look at Bellator, few guys fight 3 times a year. They don't fight like they do in the UFC. So these guys don't get paid the same way. So I think for UFC fighters, it's actually a really bad move to do that. It's better for Corey Anderson to keep working his way up the UFC and then start negotiating, you know, pay-per-view points and things. But don't go to Bellator right now, Corey Anderson. Stay with UFC.
Who knows? Maybe he got shined a little bit in the negotiations with UFC and felt disrespected a little bit, being a top 10 talent, top 15 talent, and not getting the numbers he feels like he deserves. You know, maybe Bellator was able to put up some signing bonus numbers that was able to make him bat an eyelash. But who knows? I'm all good for it, just because it changes the competition level across the board. Maybe he'll get the recognition he deserves and be able to come back into the UFC in about another year and a half, 2 years, with an actual belt under his waist. So he's got even more credibility to come with.
So the guys that I look at are the guys that move from Bellator to UFC, or they move to World Series of Fighting. Like Justin Gaethje, for instance, he was the top dog in World Series of Fighting, and then UFC picked him up, right? Eddie Alvarez got picked up by the UFC from Bellator. Hector Lombard got picked up from the UFC by Bellator. So now the next guy I'm looking at is actually Michael Chandler to move from Bellator to the UFC.
I can see that. Michael Chandler's been putting together a lot of impressive wins, throwing together a lot of really cool tools too.
And he called out Conor. He said he could finish Conor in 2. So that would be, you know, whether or not he can do it, that would be pretty cool, because Chandler's up there with like Justin Gaethje. I don't want to say Khabib, but he's definitely like top 10, if not higher, in the UFC. If you look at like the guys he beat, I mean, he beat Benson Henderson in that last Bellator card
he beat
by
the
knockout.
Out of He didn't just beat him; he beat the snot out of him. Let's be honest. And I like Ben Henderson a lot, a lot. That was hard for me to watch. Yeah. But also talking about exciting contracts, I want to talk about this one before we start wrapping it up. Paige Van Zandt just signed a contract for bare knuckle fighting. Bare knuckle. Bare knuckle. Paige, you're so beautiful. Why do that to your face? Why let your face get cut up by these raw knuckles? No, I'm just joking. All joking aside, I think it's a great move. I think it's exciting for the sport. I mean, cosmetically it won't do much for her, but she's not in the game of modeling. She's a fighter, and she's a true fighter. So I love to see this move. What do you think of her going to bare knuckle, Don?
It's really interesting because she was talking about going to Bellator. And I want to be careful about what I say because I have to see her and her husband in the training room every Monday and Thursday because we all train at the same gym. But really, I think it's actually cool because we were talking about Paige's last fight, and she's really I don't want to say brawler because she does have skills, but she just goes after every single fight, and it looks like she just wants to brawl. She wants to get in the gunfight. She wants to stand in the pocket, and she wants to swing. And so I was thinking about it more. I'm like, actually, I think it's kind of a good thing for Paige to go to bare knuckle. For one reason, bare knuckle, the betting and the salaries that they have and the payment that they're getting, from what I understand, can be way more lucrative than MMA. And I actually personally, I buy all the bare knuckle events, BKFC, because I like to see like all these, UFC guys against these pikey guys from, looks like the movie Snatch when they're just doing bare knuckle boxing. These bad English dudes, they wrap up their hands and they just get after it, right? And I'm thinking like Paige, I think Paige could actually do really, really good in bare knuckle. One of their best ladies in bare knuckle is God, what's her name? She's an Australian chick, but Paige already knocked her out. And she's one of the best girls right now in BKFC. So I think Paige is also looking at like she's already beat that girl. So she probably thinks that she can beat her again and get a way bigger payday.
Right. Where can I be champ and make some money?
Yeah. But like you said, the rounds are short. It's a short burst. It's a short, it's like boxing, right? So it's a short burst of energy. You're going to get, she's going to get cut. She's going to break her hands. She's going to get busted up, which sucks because of all the reasons that you said. But I think she could do pretty good. I think she could have some really good fights in that. It does suck for me because I know how good her jiu-jitsu is, and I know how good, well-rounded that she is. I feel like she should still work more on her overall game, and she probably will keep training in all the different disciplines. But I think she could do really well.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I can't wait to see her in bare knuckle boxing. I know she's going to do great. Her competition level is right up her alley, and she doesn't have to worry about those nasty arm bars coming out of nowhere, because that was disappointing to see her come back fight and to follow her on social media. I follow her and her husband. They're both awesome people to follow on social media, and to be so invested in a comeback and to have it so anticlimactically shut down so quickly. I think that the bare knuckle fighting will give us a really good opportunity to see Paige do what she does best, and to see her in her element, and to see her be a champion, because she is a champion. She's a champion level fighter, and it's just a matter of finding her right spot, and this might be it for her. I mean, people made fun of Artem Lobov, and then he went to bare knuckle and became a hero over there, and it's pretty amazing what it can do for people's careers, and it's a spectacle, and it's a different sport. It's not boxing. It's definitely different. Well, all right. I think that does it for us. I think that does it for us for Stoner versus Stoner Day. Anything else you want to tag on there, Don?
Well, like you said, Artem Lobov, right? He wasn't the best UFC fighter, but he made waves. I would love to see Cyborg in bare knuckle boxing.
We all. But she also just signed to Bellator not too long ago, I believe, at the beginning of this year. So she's still got a contract to write out. But I wouldn't mind seeing her in bare knuckle. That'd be awesome. Unfortunately, there's no way to cross contract. You know, it's not like the old days where you can fight in different boxing levels with different contracts or different venues. You know, you gotta. It's all exclusivity. So maybe we'll make some cross platforming happen. Who knows? But thanks for tuning in, guys. Sorry we couldn't go live for this episode. There were some technical difficulties. This will be posted through our YouTube channel onto our Facebook page. Please follow both at facebook.com/stoner versus stoner, or you can look us up at YouTube, Stoner versus Stoner. You can find me on social media at Chino Bra. That's ChinoBrah with that H at the end, very important. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Don, where can our watchers and listeners find you?
You can find me on Instagram at dstoner_LWBJJ, or on Facebook at Don Stoner.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week after UFC 252 with the predictions of the next fights, what happened in the previous fights, and more news as it unfurls in MMA. Thanks for tuning in. Shouts out to Dave, and Andy. Thank you for being patient, for waiting for us to come out with this episode, guys. I told you to give you the shout out. Here it is. Sorry, wait until the end. Maybe I'll get you again soon. Thanks for listening. Have a great night, guys. Enjoy the fights. All right.